What's up, Team Tobias? What's up, East Sandwich? Lane Haymont here with Kelly Dyksterhouse. I said the name right, and I'm going to say it right from now on. Ann Rose and Jackie Lipton. Let me turn off my phones. So today we're going to discuss to MFA or not to MFA. It's interesting because we just had our agency meeting, and by some strike of luck, Tom said he's applying to MFAs.
Should you tell everyone who Tom is?
He's one of our interns.
You act like they should know this.
Well, everyone should know that. Everyone should know who Tom is.
What's his last name?
No.
No? Where'd I get some from? I don't know.
We shouldn't be giving away people's private information on our podcast.
Well, to be fair, it's not his name, so...
No, let's just call him Tom S.
Tom S, yes. So it actually really got me thinking because he asked, what do you think about going to MFAs? And I was totally going to burst his bubble until he said, I don't want to die not having gotten an MFA. I was like, okay, go get an MFA. It's a great reason to get an MFA. But I'm curious what others think, because I have clients who have MFAs, and you're nodding a lot.
I mean, both, right? Like, I agree with you. Like, I think that there's value in it if you find value in it, but I don't think it's necessarily in our industry.
And I was going to jump in and say that during our agency meeting, Kelly raised the key question, which is, what are your reasons? It depends on what your reasons are. So I think I would like to throw to Kelly to talk about some good reasons.
Well, this is an interesting topic, especially with the four of us, because two of us have MFAs and two of us do not. So I think that's really proof that you do not need to have MFAs.
I'm guessing these two have the MFAs, and
yes,
these
but this
two
could be
do not.
Yeah, okay. I did not realize any of us had MFAs.
Jackie and I both have MFAs, and I would say that it really depends if you're considering an MFA program to consider why you want it. It is, as my husband loves to point out, a terminal degree. He thinks it's so funny. He's like, careful, you've got a terminal degree.
He is in medicine too. That's like medical humor there.
It's funny. Yes, it's a way overused joke. And so it is technically a teaching degree, right, for higher education, which is actually why I went to school to get it. I was facing an empty nest, knew I wanted to stay in writing and the publishing industry, and I thought I wanted to teach writing. So in that case, it was a phenomenal degree to get. It's helped me immensely as an agent in editing clients' manuscripts. Would it help me get published? And I think that's where the confusion lies. I think a lot of people go to MFA programs thinking it's going to help them get published. And that is absolutely not the case. Now, it can teach you some great craft, but it's not going to guarantee you a book deal when you graduate. You know, you still have to do the work. And just because you've written a beautiful literary novel doesn't necessarily mean it's marketable. So it's really worth considering why you want to go to the MFA program. Jackie, why did you choose to go?
Oh, well, I was actually going to add to that it can be great for finding a group of like-minded people. I think a lot of people, you know, I live in the Midwest and we do have a writing community, but it's a smallish community with some terrific people. And I think, you know, when you have a lot of the programs, and the one Kelly and I did is largely online with intensive residencies, and you get to intensive residencies and really get to sort of meet your people the way you can at conferences, but more intensively. I've always been a teacher, and I very much like the aspect of it being a terminal degree, for teaching purposes. And I think having an MFA actually really informed my teaching in legal writing, just in terms of workshopping and editing, which was something I already did, but I think it really helped there. I do teach on and off in various short-term programs. I think it is. I mean, I think there's so few permanent faculty jobs for creative writing teachers or for English professors anyway, that even taking it and thinking, oh, I'm going to join a faculty, that's tough. I think it helps with writing skills. I think it helps with teaching skills. I think it helps with editing skills. It helps you find a group of people that you can then connect with for the rest of your career. But I do think a lot of people assume an MFA will get them published, and that's not, it's very expensive, and it's, if that's your reason for doing it, I wouldn't recommend it.
It's interesting because I had no idea it was for teaching. Having given numerous speeches to MFA program students, thought it was to help you get published, because in those speeches I always ask, why do you want an MFA? And everyone says to get published. And I had no idea. I did not know it was a teaching thing. And that makes a lot more sense. And now I feel bad having told people, if you want an MFA, don't get one, because you don't need one to publish. So hopefully
True. But that's true. You don't need one to publish. If that's why they're going to the program, then that's very true. There are other fantastic workshops in, ways to hone your writing skills and your craft that are much less expensive than going and getting your MFA. I don't think you necessarily steered people wrong if that was their objective, was going to get their MFA in order to get published. You probably were correct. You don't, because you don't need one.
So you both mentioned it informing your writing and your editing and your skill set. So I know Jackie's a writer. Kelly, are you a writer? Okay, so you're a writer. So do you think it helped your writing in a way that helped you get published? Or is that you getting published if you're published? I know Jackie is a byproduct of the MFA program.
Mine very much was, but not because it was an MFA program. I met people in the program who encouraged me to write the first book that I wrote, because my interests are obviously law, business, and writing, which sort of uniquely positioned me to write a handbook for writers about really what you do need to understand about, oh, there it is. Thank you, Anne. She's my publicist down there. But that book very much came out of conversations I had with classmates and faculty in my MFA program, because I kept saying there should be a book that is not as sort of detailed and sophisticated as some of the publishing guides that like the Authors Guild puts out, but has a bit more in it than most craft books have in them. And everyone kept turning to me in the MFA program and saying, you could write that book. So indirectly, I mean, I don't know that I would have thought of writing the book, and I wouldn't have had people to test it out on if I hadn't had that. So I don't think that book would have happened. I was already writing pre-MFA, and I published some short stories, and I probably would have kept writing, but I don't think I would have written that particular book.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I am not published, but I do write. And I, in terms of informing my writing, actually, and this is something I'll talk to, I do have clients who have MFAs, and I will talk to them and say, this is absolutely beautiful writing, but it doesn't necessarily serve your story. So I think that I've joked with one of them, like, okay, this is gorgeous, but we need to put it through MFA detox. Like, we need to kind of strip some of the flowery, beautiful stuff out and find your actual story that's in it. So just because you can write beautifully doesn't necessarily mean you can tell a story. So the goal, of course, is to tell a beautiful story in a beautiful manner. Is that making sense?
Yes.
What I'm saying? So I think, and I have writers who write beautifully and tell amazing stories, who clients who do not have their MFAs. So I'm not a great advertiser for MFA programs right now.
Well, I think sorry.
I was just going to say, I really think it depends on why you want to go.
And I do think that different programs have different characteristics too. And I know there was a moment in time, and I don't know if this is still true, so I shouldn't say it, because I always get taken aback when other people on the podcast point their finger at certain institutions and criticize them. But there was certainly a time when the Iowa Writers Workshop, there was a type of manuscript that if you read it, you would be like, oh yes, this is an Iowa Writers workshop manuscript. There can sometimes be a sort of a sameness to manuscripts that come from particular places that may or may not impact the marketability or which publishers you sell them to just because of the type of writing. And likewise, there are some MFA programs that do more interdisciplinary work, not only across genres, but across film and TV writing and poetry and other stuff, and also incorporate more market information. Like some are very focused on the craft. And I think that was the case for many, many years with the Iowa Writers Workshop, for example. Again, don't know what it's like now. So, that's the other thing. If you're thinking of doing an MFA and you know what reasons you have for wanting to do it, you then have to do all of the legwork of figuring out which is the right program for you and which will teach you the things you want to learn.
Do you think it actually helped get an agent? Or I'm thinking of Ann and I had a meeting with someone today who said, I like concrete direction. So I'm trying to think of this in concrete ways. Do you think people see an MFA on a query or a submission and think I should take this more seriously? Or do you think it just doesn't matter at all? I know what I think when I see someone say I have an MFA, and it's totally biased of me. But having this discussion has me rethinking it because I did not know it was a teaching degree. I thought it was people are trying to get published and they think that'll help them get published.
Well, I think that's true. I think people are trying to get published and think it will help them get published. What it means to me when I see someone with an MFA in a query letter is probably that I can have some confidence the person knows what to do with editorial feedback, I hope. So it's a shorthand for me because all MFA programs involve workshopping, involve editing, involve taking feedback and doing something with it. So that, I think, as an agent is the main thing I get out of it. I have a sense that if I'm giving a revision suggestion, the person should be able to process it in some way that maybe someone who doesn't, and that would be equivalent to, if you've had an agent before or if you've worked with an editor before. It's just a shorthand for I'm used to getting editorial feedback. Hopefully they won't take it incredibly personally.
I would agree with that, but it doesn't necessarily give people a leg up in my inbox because they have an MFA.
See, I'm kind of biased in that when I see an MFA, I think back to the times I've given speeches at MFA programs and talked to students afterwards, and they all seem the total opposite of how you're speaking, Jackie. Like, they all seem like they don't want to change it. They know what they're doing, and their stuff is good, and you're an idiot if you don't publish it or take it on. And this may be the fact that it's in Boston, and we're all Bostonians, the Northeast. We're all, they call us massholes for a reason. But, that's been my experience. But totally just hearing that it's for teaching, it totally blew my mind.
I've had that experience, Lane, where I've had someone who has an MFA send me something to read, and they're like, well, my professor said it was the most brilliant thing I've ever written. And I'm like, that's great. It's not sellable in this market, though. So,
and I've spoken to a couple MFA people, and one of my clients has MFAs. I know Cynthia Palaio has an MFA. I don't know in what, but she has one. And I've heard from people that they wish MFA programs talked about the business of publishing as opposed to the craft and workshops.
There
because
is a publishing MFA you can get. You can get an MFA in publishing, but it's a specific track.
Where is that? That's
I think a few places do it. I've seen that at a few different places.
Because I MFA students are baffled, and when I tell them that's not marketable, this is how the market works, they're like, "Oh, I can't just write something?"
I've definitely had that experience. I know my program where I went, and it may have changed, it probably has changed. When I was there, and this was decades ago, well, decades, but more than a decade ago now, they prided themselves on the fact that they did not deal with the business side. It was all craft. It was very academic. When we graduated, they offered a few things on, maybe now you probably, if you want to publish, you probably need an agent. And a lot of people, you would be surprised, didn't even know that. People didn't know how to write a query letter. They didn't know what one was. So it was, I think not all. I think that's where you need to do your research as someone who might be interested in an MFA program and seeing where the focus is. Is it more academic or is it more industry focused?
And I think too, you can figure a lot of that out by looking at who's on the faculty, because if it's predominantly authors, and this goes to that point about, well, my professor said this was brilliant. Authors, particularly established authors, have their own writing track. They've been working with an agent. They're not thinking about querying and getting your foot in the door. They're not thinking about sort of what's current in the market, except to the extent that they're sort of building their own brand. And that's really important because, some MFA faculties do have more industry professionals. There are several MFA programs that have agents and editors who teach and have publishing minors that you can do. I've spoken at several different MFA residencies on how to write a query letter and how to write a nonfiction proposal and that kind of thing. But a lot of it is like who's on the faculty will give you a strong sense of what it is that is being taught or isn't being taught.
And I think in some sense, maybe I'm being overcritical, that it's sort of a disservice to not teach the business side of it because, most people want to go out and get published. And then when they go out into the quote unquote real world of publishing, they are lost or don't understand it or just cannot accept it because they had a totally different view of it. I've known plenty of MFA students say, oh, well, I don't want to do that, then I'll just self-publish.
I think it goes back to intention, right? So if the intention is to publish, then yes, it should be all of those things. But if the intention is to teach literature or something else, then end up getting your law degree or who knows, then I think that's going to change what courses that you need. So maybe it's the idea that they should be more focused on what individual students are actually looking for at the end of the day.
It opens different kinds of doors. I thought I was going to teach. I'm an agent now. I didn't know that I wanted to be an agent when I went to get my MFA. So I think there are different avenues and different benefits that you can't always put a price tag on.
Okay, final thoughts. You know what's funny? Where I got the final thoughts from? Jerry Springer, the TV show. That's what he would always end with. Like final thoughts. He used to be the mayor of some city in Ohio.
I think it was Cincinnati, wasn't it? Was it? I know it was in Ohio.
Cincinnati, yeah, it was Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay, so final thoughts.
Do your research. If there's nothing wrong with doing an MFA, you don't have to do it. But if you want to do it, do some research.
Don't think that having an MFA is a guaranteed ticket to having your book published.
I'll be honest, coming in, I was anti-MFA. But after hearing Tom and having this conversation, I'm like, okay, I get it. If you're doing MFA for whatever reasons, to teach or for the camaraderie or bucket list, I think it's like Natasha says, you have to weigh your time versus your money. Okay, Anne, why don't you take us out in your spiffy new headphones?
My spiffy new headphones. I hope they make me sound better on
They do,
podcast.
1,000 times.
So I don't know. I can't hear myself. So there you go. So thanks for joining us, Lane Haymont and Jackie Lipton and Kelly Dyksterhouse for the Literary Lens podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and you can also join our Patreon. Is that how that works? I don't need
Yes, you get the full video. You get it early. And we're doing this week, this Friday, 7 p.m. and Ask Me Anything.
Yes, where you get to come on and have a chat with us live and we answer all your questions. So fun things like that. So make sure you do all those things. Leave us a comment. Tell us if you're enjoying it. If there's a topic that you want us to hit upon, make sure you buy Jackie's book. And I'm also going to plug my own book. Make sure you pre-order a copy of The Seemingly Impossible Love Life of Amanda Dean, which comes out in September.